So we all talked about last week.
We're ready.
How great that Soviet-German pact really was. I know that you all wanted to hear me sing "Springtime for Hitler." I know you did. Springtime for Hitler and Germany.
Oh my God. He's really going to do it.
And gay, or better yet, winter for Poland and France. Anyway.
That's beautiful.
Now, my pleasure is to sing one more time to you. Springtime for Ollie and Kicklighter.
Oh, God.
His class.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, Frank, thank you very much. And I cannot believe we're already through another term. We'll start back in April. I believe, aren't we, Frank? What day is it? April the... God willing, yes. April the 6th. And so I've got a lot of interesting things planned for the spring, including how historians have viewed the whole topic of origins of World War II, which is a tale in itself because that sounds dry and stuffy, but you get a bunch of them fussing and fighting and hollering at each other. It's ugly because it's not like, oh, you have a view, and that's an interesting view, and I really love you very much. I tell you, some of them are just not as nice as you might think. So we will find out about them and the publication of the very famous origins of the Second World War in 1961 and what's been going on ever since. We'll also be talking about the events of 1940 because even though it's hard to imagine, you think 39, it's all going, but that's not really true. We're going to see that until the summer of 41 and the German invasion of the Soviet Union, it's still hard to imagine the immensity of World War II in Europe. Plus, of course, the coming of the United States and Japan into the war in December. But don't intend to go there, just going to stick with 1940 and the Russo-Finnish War and a lot of other events that people don't think about. And finally, a topic that I have thought a lot about, it's Vichy France, because of the fact that the United States would continue to have relations with Vichy until approximately 1942. So I've always found that to be a subject of great interest, even though I think I told some of you that I actually went to Vichy and would stop and ask people, you know, older folks who were out playing games and things, and I said, well, what did you all think about being the capital of France during those years? Was that a good thing for you? And they were ugly to me. Okay? So that's why they call them the ugly Americans. They ask too many questions. So should have been keeping my mouth shut and just said, well, this is a lovely town. I know better after all these decades. So I got that down. But my final day in this session is Poland Day, okay? I want to think about Poland with you. I am from a place, boy, it's small. It's called Pulaski County. It's in Georgia. You say, well, I don't think I've ever heard of that. Of course you haven't. No one has. It's... out of 159 counties, it's number 111. Yeah, I know. It's sad, really. So it's not one of the... They actually have a McDonald's and a Walgreens now. Wow. Yeah. No Walmart, but someday. But it's named Pulaski. could not be more excited growing up in Pulaski County. Now, how many people in Hawkinsville, Georgia, do you think understood about Count Casimir Pulaski? But you do. Because this Polish hero of the American Revolution is one of those figures often enough that one would study in history, Georgia history. And there's a Pulaski, Tennessee. Oh, there you go. You know it?
Oh, yes, sir, I do.
Oh, we'll see.
He's big in Chicago. He's huge.
Pulaski? Well, of course. And should be.
Skyway in New Jersey by that name.
Thank you. Do I hear more? Are there more?
Virginia.
Virginia has Pulaski.
I mean, let's just all be honorary Poles today. I mean, the joy. You watch it, mister. I didn't hear that. Anyway, Pulaski then is one of those Polish names that's well known. And this is a day to honor Poles because we want to think about, you know, they had a great empire at one time. And we never want to forget that, given the kinds of things that are going on in the 20th century. We want to remember that because I'm sure they would want you to remember that. Now, it goes back to the medieval period, and unfortunately for them, other people around them decided to take them over. Yes, each wanted a piece, and that would include the Germans, Austrians, and Russians. Look, Mom, no more Poland. And that was the end. You say, wow. Yes, by the end of the 18th century, you could go to a map and say, but where's my Poland? It's gone. It's gone bye-bye. A lot of you don't realize that and understand that this whole Polish drive, if you want to call it that, is a thing of 19th century nationalism. It's somewhat romantic, and yet at the same time, it's somewhat a matter that the other powers are not going to necessarily be happy about. But that brings us to the subject of the 20th century, Woodrow Wilson. We all know about Mr. Wilson. And Mr. Wilson going to Paris in 1919, and of course, before he went, way back in January of 1918, issuing the 14 points. And what was number 13? There will be a Poland. He goes into details. A Poland that will have its outlet to the sea. A Poland in which, you know, all ethnic Poles will be together in one nation. And who is right by his side? None other than everybody's favorite pianist and composer, Paderewski. The famous Paderewski is the composer and pianist who was one of the most famous in the world during the late 19th and 20th century. He lived in the United States for a long time. He became the leader of Poland, one of the leaders. 2021, died in 1941, and at first he was buried in Arlington and reburied, I guess, maybe after the Cold War in Poland itself. But he was a great, what I'd call, lobbyist for the cause. Because for all the Pulaski's and Pulaski counties and all the rest, we do understand there is the political reality, and it's hard. And so you have to work, much as Jews did, to create Israel with Jewish communities in the United States. The same way we go to Chicago to work that Polish crowd.
Damn right.
Okay, that's one way to put it. There was an exclamation of excitement back there, and yes, I would say it is correct that the Polish people of Chicago were a major support for all this. They would give money because the cause of recreating Poland, shall we say. And now it seems all of this was for naught. If we understand this meeting that will be held of, here's the group. Boy, is that a set. The set, of course, you recognize some of them. And I'd be smiling too if I'd been drinking all that vodka, wouldn't you? I mean, so this was not just a dry get-together. Let me assure you that they are drinking before Ribbentrop's got to make his plane ride back to Berlin, remember? And so they're having a great meeting, and everybody's really pleased with the outcome. And Stalin is just, you can just see, he's just happy as a lark. And he just, oh, you crazy, wonderful Nazis, I think I love you, you know. And you say, I never knew you cared, you know, all of those things. It's like two friends, and they are really coming together. And that Molotov, even Molotov is smiling. It took a lot to get a smile out of him, but Molotov is smiling. As I say, enough Smirnoffs and I would smile too. So they are definitely just as happy. We're agreed. Oh, you big Nazi, I just love you. And so they were having this great time. It's the translator behind them, of course. He's a little... But I guess this is a job for him, so no booze for him. He's just there to work. But all in all, it was just a wonderful night for German-Soviet relations. And, Stalin even had a toast. He said, I know how the Germans, you love your Führer, so let's have one for the Führer. They're knocking him back. It's not on ice. And no limes either. I mean, okay, so it's not like we are taking it down and we are really getting excited about our relationship. And we'll see, of course, that it's all about Poland and our hunger, because we want some. And we intend to get it. It was a strange relationship, no doubt about it. In this particular cartoon, if you can read it clearly, it indicates the scum of the earth, I believe, the bloody assassin of the workers, I presume. And this, of course, was something they said about each other in the past. And now it's like, oh, I didn't really mean it. I really care about you. You're so special. And yeah, I mean, it seemed something was not right here, even though I guess they sort of promised that for the foreseeable future, they would no longer talk ugly about each other in public. Because they were going to take it seriously, so they would say. Stalin said to Ribbentrop, as Ribbentrop was going to get on the plane, make sure the Fuhrer understands that we are taking this non-aggression pact seriously. In other words, it's not just for media consumption. We really intend for this to have effect. At the same time, people who were true believers probably had a hard time dealing with this. Imagine you were a German communist. I know, that's hard enough, but you probably weren't in Germany if you were a German communist, or you were definitely in the closet. You weren't going out and saying, I'm so proud to be a communist, and I love communism. I don't think so. You would probably be living in Moscow, hanging out somewhere. But let's just say you were an undercover communist in Hitlerian Germany. And then you got news of the non-aggression pact. How would you feel? Hurt? Angry? Disillusioned? Oh, the words that come to mind. But you say, I just can't believe this. How could he? That scumbag. Oh, I hate him, I hate him. Then, after some therapy down at the cell meeting, you would learn this is part of the plan. We know what we're doing. It's just going to be a matter of realizing that he knows best. He's the master. He knows best. And that's really what you will have, because it's very, very hard to be a communist during this period. I always talk about it like you're a young group, say in New York, and you got the new issue of the Daily Worker, maybe having coffee with some other comrades, and you pick this up and you're going like, wow, man, I'm really bummed out, because how could this be? Your whole existence as a communist is threatened. How could he make a deal with the devil? I love you, Joe Stalin, but you've broken my heart. Yeah, but you got to realize if you're a true communist, Stalin knows the right way. And the right way is to work with the Germans against the true evil. I thought he was the true evil. No, not yet. The true evil are the British and the French. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But let's go get them.
Why is there a duck on there?
A duck.
On the right side.
I don't see it. I'm so sorry.
Far right. Go by his boots. Go over to the right. Is it a goose or a duck?
I guess I really have no idea. I'm so sorry.
Just curious.
Never. Maybe just happened to be hanging out in the scene. Of course, the secret part, which was not discussed publicly, although people would find out soon enough. It wasn't going to be a secret very long, if it was to anybody, is what you see. The light green represents what the Germans would take. The dark green would be the part of Poland that the Soviets would take, in addition to what we call the Baltic republics, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. And that was understood by the Germans that the Soviets would take care of that, because you know that it used to be part of the Russian Empire. And now Stalin is getting all this back, and you're thinking, but I thought this was international communism so that everybody could be, well, not so much. I feel like I'm in a big Russian mood right now, so I want all of that back for the Russians, regardless of how Latvians, Lithuanians, and Estonians felt. And that was very hard for them, by the way. The area you see of eastern Poland was, in fact, once part of the Russian Empire. Some of you will remember how I talked about Russian-Polish wars way back in the 1920s. Now we're going to get some revenge. Revenge is sweet for the Russians. The Russians are going to get back that land. that the Poles had taken over when those Poles got a little uppity in 2021. Now you're not going to keep it. And of course, the bulk you see in central and western Poland with a heavy ethnic German population in those areas will be going, of course, to Germany. Now, if you ask what people the Nazis hated most of all, it would probably be Poles. They're running right there with Jewish people. Although Poles didn't like Jews either. But Hitler's feelings about Poles were really on the level of his feelings about all Jews. So if you are Jewish and living in either Poland or Germany, it's not likely that you would want to stay there. It is probable that as many as 3 million Poles died during the wars with Germany, about half as many as Jews. So it's a very serious business, but you understand territorially, neither Soviets nor Germans could care a rip about the feelings of Poland. Poland had had the unfortunate lot of coming to existence thanks to that 13th point of the 14 points between difficult neighbors, Germany and the Soviet Union. Neither one liked it, and nothing happened during those 20 years to change that fact. Poland was far from democratic. I don't want anyone to think. Czechoslovakia is a model country, beloved by all. But Poland was there's not even a pretense that it was democratic. It was run by a group after Pilsudski's death, as we've seen. It had a very anti-Semitic ruling class. And so when we're looking for people to be heroes, like Pulaski, as I did as a schoolboy, this is not that Poland, okay? This is a different set of circumstances. And I guess all those folks had gone to Chicago. But Paderewski was spreading the good word about Poland and let's preserve Poland and so forth. But he's continuing his musical career and then died in 41. So interestingly to me, the fate of Poland after this time. So we do have then an understanding that Poland was the entree. No one talked about it, at least on the part of the Germans and the Soviets. I can assure you that there was no press release and saying, we're up for a Polish course in a few weeks. Nobody was talking about it officially. But I think when Polish representatives would contact Berlin and Moscow, they were getting rather chilly responses. So I think there were hints above. We've already talked about the disillusionment of the international communist community. We know that. And again, shifting the focus away from Germany and saying, well, you know who's really evil? It's those French, Americans, British, because they're imperialists and we hate them. So let's concentrate on them. I don't know whether you would say we've developed a strange and wonderful love for Germany. I think you'd just say we're going to get along better. You'd say it like that. But you wouldn't want to say like, we send you a big old hug or kid. You know, you got levels of affection. So, I mean, it's not, we found a new love in our lives. I don't think it's quite that. I don't care how much vodka you have. That's still not going to work out. So we understand that. Meanwhile, the British and French, who had been negotiating with the Soviets on a possible agreement, were sent home. And we're basically told it's a no-go. Because even if it had gotten very far, it was for Molotov only a matter to ask more questions or to bring up something else. And many people have heard lawyers and gone over agreements and understand how that happens. It's not as if you have many problems if you are a Molotov. You know how to do it. That's why you have the job. To stall because you know the boss is going to get an agreement with Germany. And that's exactly what he did. Boy, the Times was on it. For 3 cents, you could get a copy of the paper. And I was thinking, as I do sometimes, how interesting about, you think, what else was in the paper that day? I don't know why I think about things like that. There's like a deal with Argentina. Yeah. And I love Argentina. Nice, Perón, Argentina. 1939. Mm-hmm. And so I was interested in the fact that Americans, well, of course it's an international paper in a way, but that it was that important that it got those headings. And I think it's very illustrative of how no matter whether you're American or you're European, I mean, this is big, big news for everybody. Whatever part of the world you're in, if they get this kind of coverage in the New York Times. The idea, though, is that if these two fellas can have an agreement, I guess anybody can beat the swords into plowshares, huh? Because these are the ultimate fascists versus communists. They are the ultimate haters. And not everybody was happy. And I ask you to think about a little bald man in Rome. It hurts. You think, you mean Il Duce? Yes, I do. Because nobody asked him to go to Moscow. No, it's like, couldn't I just sit I don't have to sit in first class, I'll just sit in the back of the plane. No, we don't need any Italians. So they're upset. And if let's go further east. The Japanese are not happy about this because they've just gotten warmer and closer to the Germans. They really have. Getting to know you, the Rome, Berlin, Tokyo axis, getting to know all about you and how beautiful that is. And then the next thing you know, the one you thought you cared about is now playing with the Soviet Union. And we, Japan, we don't like the Soviet Union. We really dislike them. So it hurts people sometimes. But it's sort of like Germany and the Soviet Union say, I don't want to sing something about our love will always be or we'll survive. Something I will survive. I'm not going to do it. Unlike some people I know. You are protected. You have an insurance, yes, that only in my shower do I do these things. And that 10 years. And I don't know, you always think, what will they do that 10th year? And you get a little note that said, our pact is over, I'm going to attack you tomorrow. I don't think it's supposed to be that way. It's sort of like renewable, like insurance. They'll send you a notice and they say, we've loved our relationship for the past 10 years and could we renew this? Well, you needn't worry about it because it's not going to happen. But it's to understand that even as Ribbentrop was getting on that plane, Hitler and his generals were already thinking about Poland. Oh my gosh, it's not like, gosh, what should we do now? Should we have a big I love the Soviet Union party or something? No, we're headed for Poland. That, of course, was what this was going to be all about. Again, the cartoonist had a wonderful time. And I just thought that was hilarious. Could you imagine? And Poland as Little Red Riding Hood. That was in 1939. The press and Great Britain, the United States, all just thought this was the funniest thing. Not funny in a good way, but the idea that these two could get together, these two wolves could get together, and of course, Poland would be the sufferer. And of course, the famous love affair between the two. What a bride, huh? Yes. I mean, that just ain't pretty. But again, over and over, people in the West got a big charge out of this, those early days after the treaty. Because remember, all of this is going on late August of 1939. So all of these particular cartoons and so forth are really during those days, because things are going to be getting very grim shortly thereafter. That's why I ask you to note that these particular cartoons are of a very, very specific time period, and it won't be so funny anymore. Clearly, we are looking here at Neville Chamberlain, who was, if you ever have the opportunity on YouTube, you could listen to his address to the nation. The invasion of the Germans took place on September the 1st. Now, let me recall for you that during those days, between, the late spring and summer of 1939, the British and French, who basically had recovered from appeasement, those dreams, had warned the Germans not to invade Poland. In other words, they weren't willing to do anything about Czechoslovakia. But, hey, we like Czechs, but we have to move on. And in moving on, we are prepared to protect Poland. Now again, if you were like working in the public relations office for Britain, you would go like, but we weren't protecting the democracy, why are we protecting Poland? Well, it's there, and we got to make a stand now. We've decided to go all against Hitler. And the question is going to be, if you really think that, are you willing to do anything about it? Well, we're going to promise them this guarantee. We're going to say, if you do something in Poland, we're going to make you sorry, Adolf Hitler. So take that. In the speech, Chamberlain, and this will not be a Churchillian type speech, I promise you. It's more the kind of speech that somebody makes when you're very sad. And he was very sad. He said, gosh, and I think this was probably like Sunday midday when he did this, spoke on a, I guess you say, empire-wide network to all the British people and talked about how all of his hopes and dreams for world peace and for the British were now ended. I mean, it's definitely, for a man like him, terrible. And you know, it's not like, yeah, we're going to war, we're going to kill them. Boy, it's going to be something. Those Germans, they're going to get it good now. No, it's none of that. This is all about the sorrow. Can we?
Would you like to play it?
I would. Because I just love for you to hear the tone of voice. It's just so pitiful. Because, yeah.
One question, Dr. Kicklighter. You have August, you have August 3rd. Is that August or September 3rd? September 3rd is the one that I have.
Yeah, that'll be perfect. There it goes. Hmm, 11:15.
This is London. You will now hear a statement by the Prime Minister.
I am speaking to you from the Cabinet Room at 10 Downing Street. This morning, the
There's no
British ambassador
sound.
in Berlin
No, I can't hear it
gave
either.
the German government a final note stating that unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from Poland, a state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany. You can imagine what a bitter blow it is to me that all my long struggle to win peace has failed. Yet I cannot believe that there is anything more or anything different that I could have done and that would have been more successful. Up to the very last, it would have been quite possible to have arranged a peaceful and honourable settlement between Germany and Poland. But Hitler would not have it. He had evidently made up his mind to attack Poland whatever happened. And although he now says he put forward reasonable proposals which were rejected by the Poles, that is not a true statement. The proposals were never shown to the Poles, nor to us. And though they were announced in the German broadcast on Thursday night, Hitler did not wait to hear comments on them, but ordered his troops to cross the Polish frontier the next morning. His action shows convincingly that there is no chance of expecting that this man will ever give up his practice of using force to gain his will. He can only be stopped by force. And we and France are today, in fulfillment of our obligations, going to the aid of Poland, who is so bravely resisting this wicked and unprovoked attack upon her people. We have a clear conscience. We have done all that any country could do to establish peace. But a situation in which no word given by Germany's ruler could be trusted, and no people or country could feel itself safe, had become intolerable. And now that we have resolved to finish it, I know that you will all play your part with calmness and courage. At such a moment as this, the assurances of support which we have received from the Empire are a source of profound encouragement to us. When I have finished speaking, certain detailed announcements will be made on behalf of the government. Give these your close attention. The government have made plans under which it will be possible to carry on the work of the nation in the days of stress and strain that may be ahead. But these plans need your help. You may be taking your part in the fighting services or as a volunteer in one of the branches of civil defense. If so, you will report for duty in accordance with the instructions you receive. You may be engaged in work essential to the prosecution of war or the maintenance of the life of the people, in factories, in transport, in public utility concerns, or in the supply of other necessaries of life. If so, it is of vital importance that you should carry on with your jobs. Now, may God bless you all, and may He defend the right. For it is evil things that we shall be fighting against: brute force, bad faith, injustice, oppression, and persecution. And against them I am certain that the right will prevail.
That is the end of the Prime Minister's statement. Please stand by for the important government announcements, which, as the Prime Minister has said, will follow almost immediately. That is the end of the announcement.
Very formal, as you can surmise. Very difficult day, and it was September, and I apologize for my error. The Prime Minister would last until May of 1940, which may surprise a lot of people to understand, because he was truly, as you could probably tell from his tone, a truly broken man. And the French, as we're going to see in the spring, were none too united themselves. He did gain the support for an Anglo-French shout out, shall we call it, to the polls and say, we care a lot, we support you, we're probably going to help you, we'll see about that. But in the event we know that it's not going to be. On the other hand, we also know that far from accepting this situation, the Poles are going to ask for that support, and there will be leaflets from the RAF bringing leaflets and dropping them throughout Poland, denouncing Germans and saying more or less, we'll be there before long. But we know, of course, the British and the French were not prepared to help them. And as a result, the campaign for the Germans went very clearly. This is what the Germans wanted, a local war in which they could deal with the Poles very quickly. In fact, they were so fast that the Soviets became somewhat alarmed with their new buddy. They were taking more of Poland than the Soviets really thought right. So I think then we have to have another visit, another chit-chat. And of course, the result was that the Soviets will move into Poland, into the eastern part. And this will be about the middle of the month, maybe September 17th. I can assure you that there's no more Poland as of October, when you have one side with the Germans. And you're not going to believe where the two armies meet up. It's a place that's familiar to many of you, been in my classes, that will make you very romantic. Brest-Litovsk. You'll have good Brest-Litovsk memories, I hope. You remember the end of the First World War for the Soviet Union, and you remember crying and the shit. Yes, and big hugs all around. Oh, you big Bolshevik, I'm so happy the war is over. Oh, you sturdy Prussian warrior, I think I love you. Yeah. I mean, it was a strange place to meet now, but they did, the two armies, and you can actually see interesting photographs of Germans and Soviets, soldiers. And they say, wow, we've heard about those German cigarettes. They look good. Could I have one? Is this a smoking area? I think everywhere was smoking area, just joking. But yes, and so, gosh, those are nice cigarettes. And they exchanging cigs and then talking about, gosh, I love your tanks. I mean, it's like, and you're thinking like, man, this is like an ecumenical thing, that's yes? Right, absolutely. And it just cracked me up in a sick way when you see the Germans and the Soviets all together, because they have a nice time. And you know what they're doing? They're getting ready for the German army movement out of the area. So they have the band, maybe the Soviet band plays something, because they're going to move a little further east and say, we love you, comrades. Maybe have a bowl of borscht together, We're loving some Russian food. This is great. We'll never forget you. Now, you ask, how many times do you have these love fests between the Soviets and the Germans? I think this is it, okay? I don't think there's going to be another. But I did think you would want to be aware of this whole ecumenical thing. You say, well, did the Poles get invited? No Poles. Thank you very much. No Poles. This is all about us. And what does it mean? Well, it means, of course, that the line has now been drawn, and the much smaller part is going in the east to the Soviets. And I was interested to note these areas. The Russians are going to say, well, this was ours until you blankety-blanky Poles took it away from us. So it's really ours anyway. And it's very interesting to me that this happened, because as a result that this happened, this area, which would later become part of Ukraine and Belarus. Remember the USSR? That's right. That area, which was eastern Poland, would become part of Belarus and part of Ukraine. Of course, they're independent now. But in the day, those areas were taken. Now, Hitler didn't want all of the rest of Poland. Oh, no. He wanted the Poles to stay in their part with German supervision, and that would be under what they called a central government. But the western part of Poland he wanted, and he took it. And that territory will now be annexed. Did I mention Danzig? Oh, no, and I'm going to right now. The Danzig area was very important to the Fuhrer, taking that whole area in the north. What we call now Gdansk, Poland, was going to be now a German city. If I were a Pole, I would move promptly, and I don't know where I'd go, but I'd move somewhere because I wouldn't want to be in that area. That area would now be taken by the Germans, and that whole area of Poland, well, there isn't a Poland anymore, is there? Except for this central area that will now be dominated by German officials. Now, as I said, millions of Poles are going to die during this period, so it's clear that this is not a good period to be Polish, and there's no way to escape because the Russians, the Soviets, don't like them any more than the Germans do. So they were abused on both ends, no question about that. But it's interesting to note that as we deal with this particular issue of Poland, that we understand that for most people in Britain and France who never even got the chance to help Poland, because neither was really ready, it was enough to cause them to go to war. But it didn't mean any more than most of us could imagine what it was going to mean. That's why I always like to say there's a reason that we don't know the future, because it would be just, could you imagine being British and listening to that newscast, how devastating that would be if you really understood the Blitzkrieg and all that was going to happen to your country and your people and all the devastation and death that would happen in the next, 6 years? But as far as Neville Chamberlain, I must sadly report that his life was not going to be that much longer. He resigned finally in May of 1940 and died the following year. So, very tragically so. And there we will stop. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed this term and looking forward to seeing you in April. I hope you'll be back so that I can tell you some more. And thank you all very much. Bye.